Hello, I'm Dee Wagner, the originator of Chi for Two, and this is Fred.
Hello everyone.
Fred is a trainee who is studying to be a Chi for Two embodiment coach. So glad to have you with us,
I'm
Fred.
happy to be here with you, Dee.
And Fred is here to help me demonstrate for you the Chi for Two practices, partner practices. 35 of the Chi for Two partner practices. There are 40 Chi for Two partner practices. 35 are for relationships where there is a built-in power differential. Child-parent, student-teacher, employee-boss. Fred as a trainee in the program, and me as Fred's trainer.
Right?
Yeah. And then when you're working with your clients, then you will be the person who has the power authority in the relationship. In polyvagal languaging, we talk a lot about what's called co-regulation. Co-regulation is a kind of sciencey word, which really just means Chi for two. Energy, the energy, the Chi that occurs when two people interact. So my energy will affect you.
And mine would affect you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then mine affected by yours will affect you, and
so on and so on.
So on and
Sure.
so on and so on. Now, in the relationships where there's a built-in power differential, the person in power holds circles of support for the person who is having the experience through the practices of developing healthier bodily functioning. I like to think of co-regulation in relationships where there's a built-in power differential, just like when you're learning to drive a car, and ideally there's a car that has two steering wheels, and the person who knows how to drive already is doing most of the driving at first. And then with practice, bit by bit, the other person is learning. So healthy embodiment happens in 4 emanations of embodiment. An emanation is like you drop a pebble, could be a pebble, and then it'll be a tiny emanation, but a pebble in water, and then there are these circles that kind of go out. The first emanation of embodiment is navel radiation, meaning that pebble would go right here. And there's this radiation out. So the energy flows from the core, down the legs, up the spine, out the arms, out the head, out the voice. We know this from several sources. Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, who created body-mind centering, helps us understand about this flow of energy from the core. We form in the womb from the base of the intestines. In Tai Chi and Qigong, this is the main energy center. The energy mostly flows, ideally flows through from that main energy center. So, the first of all the practices that are designed to help us have navel radiation, that first practice is called STAR. So Fred, in this moment, how okay or not okay does it feel to be a star?
It's my favorite question, Dee. Right now it feels good. It feels great to be a star. So I feel fully expressed and like a star.
Like a star, yes. And this first practice, where it starts with a question like that, helps our clients, for your clients when you're the coach, helps our clients recognize that as much as the movement that all the practices invite is developmental movement, it's how we ideally embody from the earliest forming in the womb. And it establishes the dance of relationship, the Chi for Two, because you might, a client of yours might be like, exactly.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a star for it like it. True.
Yeah, exactly.
It all depends how they feel.
Exactly, yeah. So, the second practice in this navel radiating series is potentially supportive surfaces. So, you might, Fred, notice all the places that your body touches a potentially supportive surface.
Like the chair.
Like the chair. Yeah, like the floor under your feet. And as you know, but we'll tell you guys, we use the word potentially, a potentially supportive surface, because while the floor may be fully capable, that cement floor right there under that mat, of supporting your feet, and the chair may be very solid and sturdy and capable of supporting you, often our bodies carry muscular tension such that we aren't really letting the surfaces who could support us support us.
Absolutely. If you hold your shoulders up like this, or if you're kind of naturally tense, then you're not allowing the potentially supportive surfaces to support you.
Yeah. And as we have discussed, if a somatic practitioner thinks they're being helpful to say something like, okay, now I want you to relax.
It's not the right choice of words, like telling someone to calm down. It's never the best choice of words, no.
Yeah, not in terms of the body's healthiest functioning. I mean, if there's a big fire and somebody wants to put you basically into shutdown and robotic functioning, so that fireman says, look, relax, go down, make this phone call, do the such and such. I mean, that's gonna shut you down, but it also could lead to you just, okay, tell me what to do, I'll be the robot, I'll do that thing because I don't want the fire to, but healthily functioning, if I say, I want you to relax, then you're relaxing for me.
Correct.
Right, so this practice, potentially supportive surface, makes room for compassion for the muscular tension that is there. You can be curious. We can invite you to be curious. As you're curious about any muscular tension you might be feeling right now, Fred, you might find that you want to move around a little bit. You know, maybe you want to push your feet into the ground, or I mean, you might not. Yeah. And you might find that doing some movement kind of helps you relax.
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, this is a good example of one of the core tenets of Chief 2 is the invitation. And the idea that, you know, we want to invite you to how okay or not okay is it to feel, you know, to be a star. And so, yeah, potentially supportive services definitely is one to the client gets to really be or have their voice and say, you know what, I'm not a star. You know, this service isn't really supporting me like I wanted to, and you know, in that moments when it's important for them to have that voice.
Yeah, it actually becomes more navel radiating. In that moment, your navel radiating energy coming up and out your voice. So all these practices that are part of the emanation that helps us have navel radiation have these nuanced little ways that navel radiation within the dance of relationship might begin. The next practice is deep nourishment, core awareness. So how okay or not okay is it to be a star? Well, sometimes the surface, the support, a potentially supportive surface, the dance with support plays a role in how okay or not okay it feels to be a star. So we look at potentially supportive surfaces. Now we're going right in for inviting core awareness. This practice, deep nourishment, core awareness. So you could, sometimes when people do this practice, they actually put a hand on their core. You might or might not. But here in this practice, people can, Fred, you might, notice what you notice about your core. Some people will be like, I don't feel it. with this practice, they begin to realize how much in their life they don't feel their core at all. Even just right there in you, the resonant of your
Yeah, no, it's definitely often that people kind of go on autopilot and don't really kind of take the time to feel into themselves. I've begun, during this practice, I've begun to at least recognize my breath and noticing, how the core can, go back and forth like that.
Sure, that when the diaphragm pulls down, the internal organs can expand for a deep breath, and that's why we have that word nourishment in there. Deep nourishment, core awareness. When the diaphragm comes down for a deep diaphragmatic breath, we nourish our body through having more and more oxygenation of the blood. Another thing, people, you right now, as you practice, help demonstrate this practice here with me. This deep nourishment core awareness, something you might be aware of is when people tune into their core, it's also like tuning into their intuition. That sense of what am I hungry for? And as I really, I see some stuff starting to come.
Yeah, you and I have done work on the eating aspect of, just for me, and what am I hungry for kind of indicates, is it really food? Is it maybe I'm thirsty? Or, maybe I need a hug.
Yeah.
Maybe I need some reassurance from my partner or my sibling or family member. Maybe I'm just uncertain about something and need to bounce it off someone I trust and get some feedback. It might not always be time for a meal, or even a big meal. Maybe I just need a snack,
Yes.
So
all those
things,
really deep awarenesses of nourishment. Beautifully said. Now, from deep nourishment, core awareness, as we are going into core awareness, the next practice is amniotic fluid. When the navel was the umbilical cord, and the food came in through the umbilical cord, the oxygen came in. So this practice can be something as simple as inviting a client to move an arm as if it were in fluid, as if it were in kind of an ocean of fluid. Soon as you invite this practice, it's always useful to name. If you happen to have had any sort of in utero trauma, this could all of a sudden feel scary. And so I would hope you would let me know something feels not okay about pretending this. So we can be very clear that while we pretend in amniotic fluid, the idea of a symbolic redo of forming in a womb, we are not actually unable to breathe because we are under the water or in a drowning kind of situation. Once we have established that it's okay to imagine that you are in amniotic fluid, that you are redoing your womb kind of experience, people might want to have legs, they might want to stand. If you stand, then when you move in this, like I am in amniotic fluid, it can begin to feel like Tai Chi. That sense of even though you would not be standing if you were in the womb, when you move your whole body as if you are in amniotic fluid. And then there's an opportunity to imagine a redo of forming in a womb. This is a good opportunity for us to name that Chi for Two is a polyvagal informed, multi-generational trauma healing method. So while we focus on this infant parent dance, we also invite people to recognize the cultural traumas, the social systemic traumas, the multi-generational trauma patterning that was part of everybody's actual experience. This isn't about talking, this is no shame blame for any real parents, because the parents are part of a long, multi-generational dance.
The realization that there needed to be some empathy for, you know, when you first start the journey of thinking about why I am who I am and, you know, going through therapeutic processes, oftentimes, and the stereotype that, you know, gets is, well, it's your parents' fault, it's the mom's fault. While they have influence, you gotta have some empathy to recognize that their parents may not have been equipped to fully be able to catch their energy or hold space for them. And then their parents, you know, so it's multi-generational, as we know.
We come from a system, one of our ethical guidelines is to develop mindfulness about the multi-generational trauma patterning that fosters one group dominating and oppressing another group. And then the people who have the power, authority, invite the circle, they hold the circles of support to invite the practices. And it is like the wild mammal mothers, like a mama wolf. And the mama wolf, with multiple pups, helps there not be dog eat dog. So this is a symbolic redo of an ideal something that has, you know, it's rare. It's an ideal situation that we're redoing, which lets us become who we would have become had we gotten what was ideal.
There you go, exactly.
And as we have done the practice, one of the practices that can look like Tai Chi, we can also name that it's fun to think about Tai Chi, how, oh yeah, this is kind of like a redoing of forming in a womb. And literally the idea that we are moving the waves that are around us, because everything's an ocean of waves. And when we move our hand through the waves that are around us, we are creating our energy sphere, our space that ideally we get to say about what happens to the space around our bodies. Now that's totally ideal.
Very much so. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So that's amniotic fluid. We have gone back. We have begun looking at a redo of the womb space in terms of how we might let the energy flow freely throughout in a navel radiating way. The next navel radiating practice is elbow push. So would it be okay if I came over? Whenever you're working with a client, we ask about proximity, like could I come closer?
Absolutely.
And then would it be okay if I put my hand on your elbow so you could put your elbow into my hand?
Yes.
That involves touch. And we talk about, again, one of the ethical guidelines is that you use touch to provide resistance for push. This is elbow push. So I'm inviting you to push your elbow into my hand, because when we push into something that's not us, we begin to feel us. Yeah, like you can feel your arm. Yeah, and the more you push, you feel your core. You feel your, right there, that's what you're feeling. Yeah, and you might even feel all the way down to your feet.
I do.
And so there's navel radiation happening. And this is a redo that when we're born, humans are like most dependent mammals at birth. We got those big old heads with our big old brains. So we need to get born, and then we need more womb space in the form of a pouch. We call it the pouch, the papoose, the swaddling. So this is like, my hand is like the swaddling.
Oh yeah, like when a child is fully enveloped.
I think papoose, you haven't ever heard the word papoose, but when I said it today, you really got the picture more than you've ever gotten before. That's so cool. Yeah.
That makes sense, okay.
Because when we're born, there's a moro reflex where the arms kind of fling out and pull forward. But other than reflexive moves, the reflexive grasping, the birth crawl that's built in, we don't have control over our arms. Those of us who have raised children and watched the children develop, it's so funny to watch when they first start like looking at their hands like, what is that thing? It keeps flying around my face. What is that thing? They haven't figured out, oh wait a minute, I can control this. Oh, this is gonna come in really handy. I'm I'm going to be able to do these things. So this elbow push is a redo of that kind of swaddling beginning of navel radiation. Then the next one is C-star. So we are moving now into some of the practices that can involve more full body movement. So if we were to stand to do C-star, it's called C-star because the old word starfish, they changed to C-star because starfish aren't really fish.
Right.
So the idea of C-star is just to imagine that you are a C-star. And it's a kind of fun, like expressive drama thing, like look at me, I am a C-star. It can be a fun meditation because if you imagine you're a C-star, your arm would come right from your belly. And if your arms each came from your belly, like this started right here, your spine would just be another arm or leg.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wouldn't even have a head. Like this would just be another hand or foot. And it can be a really wonderful meditation to think, I can't even think, because I don't have a head brain. All I have is a belly brain. I am just, the belly for a starfish is in the core here. So if you think it's my spine, it's just another arm or leg.
I can't tell how many times or how often I would like to turn my brain off, so this is a good exercise.
Sometimes being still, it's harder to turn your brain off than it is to do it in a movement meditation. Yeah! And it can take people back to that kind of kid-like space.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, watch this, I'm a C-star. And then, speaking of these practices that are more playful, more in the kind of circle of support that's like your five, you know, like watch this, is bubble. So this is one where we work on how the navel radiation is in the breath. And you could take your hands like this and blow your hands like you're blowing up a bubble. Yeah. You can feel how the belly used muscles in the belly make that. And then when you have your bubble, you can sort of feel what it's like to feel, I have a bubble. I get to say about what happens in this area around my body, my personal space. Now, we know from understanding of trauma that dorsal vagal, the vagus nerve, which is polyvagal, has dorsal branch and a ventral branch. The dorsal branch affects the body in the core. There's something we now understand that's called dorsal vagal shutdown that slows digestion and shallows breathing. So breath work can be triggering. And then the 2 for 2 practices, it's not that we're trying to not trigger. We are trying to awaken slowly. So it still has that kind of triggery, is this okay? That kind of pop of a feeling of, the whole reason I've never done anything like this for my whole life, or at least since that accident, was because it didn't feel safe. I inhibited. I want to avoid how I feel. And so I inhibited movements. Or I feel really silly, this feels stupid, I didn't get to feel, this is, and so to do it, to have someone invite you to explore it, can have that pop of a feeling, is it really safe now to be this way? So bubble, because your breath is claiming space with each breath, people can feel safer with a conscious breath work when they're actually using the breath to take up space in front of the body.
It creates your own little world, so to speak, or at least the space around you. You can be the captain of your space in a sense,
Yeah. And then the final navel radiating practice is runny egg. This one's great for teenagers because it's a real little play. It's a whole drama in and of itself. So the idea of running egg, and I will demonstrate it, and then you can see if you feel like doing it today or not. And of course, this is you also imagining you as a coach and knowing how it is when you invite this practice. The whole idea of the running egg practice is sometimes we just feel like the world doesn't have room for us. Yeah, that we're just like that we're too big, and so we try to get tiny, like down into a little shell. We're trying to get into a teeny tiny egg of a shape, but it can be so annoying and so impossible that sometimes we just want to burst out of that shell. We just want to fling eggshell everywhere, maybe just pow, eggshell. Then we don't have a container anymore. And like a runny egg, maybe we run to the ground, maybe we run back onto our chair, maybe we run, wherever we run, we just, and of course that's very melodramatic to do that whole thing, very teenage-like.
Yes.
Yeah, but sometimes
that's reality though. If it kind of bottles up, it comes like TNT, like as soon as it just explodes, and then once it comes out, there's nowhere to go to it.
Yeah.
And so you just fall out, man.
And it has that feeling of, I get to be I get to share and show the play to my embodiment coach. That can say, I get it,
Yeah.
I get it. It's classic tragedy.
Shakespearean.
Yes, it's Shakespearean tragedy, and yay for you to tell the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It gives you a chance to be a star as the coach catches the story. And maybe in that collapse, there's a potential to notice all the places that your body touches the support of it. And then that gets us into the contralateral practices. So if you will recall, there's 4 emanations of embodiment. We went through all of the practices that invite navel radiation, and you'll notice how it kind of built into us standing. Now, the contralateral practices. The contralateral movement means movement from one side of the body to the other side. Movement that exists because we have a right and left brain. And that right and left brain use movement contralaterally because it's how we travel. When we do contralateral movement, it coordinates right and left brain. But before that, it can awaken movement that's been inhibited by dorsal vagal shutdown. So blockages in the navel radiation can happen for movement that's contralateral. The first contralateral movement is twist. It, just like STAR, it invites the relational aspect, because we can say to a client, like I'll say to you, that when we're babies, we need to get connected to someone who's going to carry us to shelter and carry us and bring food and water to us. And when we feel a connection, and we feel like we can have eye contact, our middle ear muscle can flex, and listen for this voice, when we can feel safe here, then it feels okay to twist our head and disconnecting the connection here, but feeling that circle of support that says you can look away and drink in another sight or sound. And when you come back here, I'm here like, yeah. And that look can have the look of, how was your trip? I mean, what we know, like from the attachment theorist Edward Tronick's still face experiment, that in reality what often happens is as soon as you look away, I'm either super busy thinking about how am I going to pay the bill, and you come back and I'm like, oh no, you're zombie faced, where I'm not going to look away from you again, because every time I look away from you, you turn into a zombie. Or the parent can be so in need of this baby stuff that you look away and they're like, oh no, don't leave me, which is that more multi-generational trauma, if I didn't get my connection, then I might hold you longer to fulfill something for me.
Yes. Unfortunately, often can manifest in unhealthy, I don't want to say narcissism, but sometimes it can be that way with the moms and with the parental figure that didn't get what they needed. And it's like, oh, well, I need this, I'm gonna get it from my child. And so that's
Yeah.
what we are working to
Absolutely,
fight
because
against.
when I got my counseling degree, so I'm a counselor and a dance movement therapist and a registered somatic movement educator, I remember being told that narcissism is the earliest infant wounding. And of course, now that we understand about the patterning that gets built into the relationship over generations, you can see that this is systemic wounding. When this kind of, I've got so many unfinished infant dances that I keep trying to get you to be the circle of support for me. And what we do in Chi for Two is we work with families, as you know, and we work with whoever's the oldest person in the family. And Fred and I recently did a session with a mom and their child. And it was fun we did it together, me as the originator of Chi for Two, you as the trainer. And so I was like the great-grandmother, you were like the grandmother, and then there was the mother, and then there was the child. So we invite the oldest person to experience the practice because they can't hold circles of support for a practice that no one has ever held a circle of support for them doing the practice. So
Very key, very important. And as you continue, or as I continue to go through my coaching journey, recognizing that empathy is very, very important. And when you work with a mother and child, or even one person, like having the ability to kind of step into that role and welcome the energy and hold the circles, and recognize that they might not have had it in order to give it to the child that we're working with. So then trying to practice that with them, hold that space for them, demonstrate it is really what we're doing, so that they can then hold the space for their child is very key.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind demonstrating that the two twists, there can be a twist from the head, like we were just talking about, where it's okay to look your head away. And there can also be, this feels really great, to do the twist that can happen in the pelvis. Yeah. And this twist in the pelvis, ideally, in the times in our lives when we are moving our legs, it becomes okay, just like with arms, to claim the space around our body with our legs. That I can put a foot down. I can put a foot down, because putting a foot down eventually helps me stand. It helps me stand on my own 2 feet. Yeah.
I told you, Dee, that this is a part of my yoga practice too, so I feel it all in the lower back, and like these are movements you don't typically do, so it can also awaken the awareness of various needs you have within your body. If you're always upright at a computer, you don't recognize kind of how some muscle groups are neglected.
And we talk about in Chi for Two how the twist helps transition us in so many developmental ways. Like if you kept twisting onto that side, whenever you're ready, you'd roll over onto your belly. And that's how the baby rolls over. And it becomes just a discovery of, whoa, look at this. I rolled over.
I can stand up and walk.
Yeah. Now, the next practice, the next contralateral practice is bicycling on the changing table. Okay. And so those twisty moves, when we are babies, oh wait a minute, that's not the next one. Sorry, I have them all written down here. No, the next one is alternate shoulder rolls, but we'll get to bicycling on the changing table. That's a good thing to kind of look at in terms of the next one. So we've got twists, which is happening with the head. And the reason the next one is alternate shoulder rolls is because the ventral vagal nerve comes down from the brainstem. It's called ventral because it's a branch that comes forward, sort of in the same way that the jawline, that kind of alignment. And there's two of them, but these branches come forward and they're myelinated, they're coated, they're sheathed for more nuanced engagement and releasing. And then the rest of the vagus nerve travels down with lots and lots of branches, and then they have the dorsal that affects the digestion. But so often, because of the ventral vagal's role in the relational dances, we can get tight in our jaw and in our neck and our shoulders. So alternate shoulder rolls, which is contralateral, one and the other. So I invite you into the practice alternate shoulder. Yeah. And as you see with Fred, you could roll them back, you could roll them forward. Yeah, that breath that just came. Yeah, and all the practices are practices. We could do this one a bunch of times, maybe every time we meet for a while. And then in Chi for Two, we get to feel the difference between doing the practice here in the dance of relationship and then doing it on your own. Maybe this practice feels like, oh, this is so great, and you come in and you say, Dee, why don't I do this when I'm not here with you? You know, I know how great this is.
For sure.
But then, of course, the answer is that we pattern all this in the dance of relationship when we're little. And so we can often go into shutdown and not be able to practice unless we're actually with that person who's holding a circle of support for us. And then you get the chance to not shame yourself. You get to notice that you have shamed yourself. Be curious, be compassionate. Know that if I do it enough with the coach, eventually I'm going to start doing it on my own, because that's just how life works.
Exactly. And it's interesting how you do often shame yourself when you're by yourself. Like, you at the computer and doing something, it's like, well, why am I doing that? That doesn't make any sense. That's not what I was taught to do. And so when you do have opportunity to practice more and more, and you have someone welcoming and holding the, encouraging all of that, you get to rewire some of those, memories or ways of being.
Yeah, and then that works through the whole body in terms of creating more navel radiation in a play dance way, not a fight flight way. So now the next one is flow hands. So flow hands is a practice, it's Tai Chi-ish, but we invite flow hands to start this way. But you know that once you know that this is the invitation, you can do it however you want. Flow hands is basically just about moving your hands in front of your body in an alternate-handed way. So it's a contralateral practice. We start at the diaphragm going down, because ideally with that deep diaphragmatic breath, the diaphragm goes down, the pelvic floor goes down, that brings in that deep diaphragmatic breathing. So we start with that. But then often people will just feel like, there's something that's wanting to come up, and that's that blocked navel radiation. Like, no, I don't want to go down. Or sometimes people do it like this, which is kind of this sense of, I want to shut down. Like I just feel the need to shut down. And then there can be a lot of empathy from the embodiment coach that says, sometimes shut down. We shut down, we learn to shut these movements down because it wasn't safe. And if that's what we
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the safety aspect of it for a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life, whoever they are, wherever they come from, whoever their parents were, the safety piece, internal safety, internal peace, feeling like, do I have full control of my body? What movement could be scary, could be, aggressive to my environment?
Yes, absolutely, and that's why in Chi for Two, we are not saying, okay, it's safe now everywhere. We're saying that one practice at a time, in this setting with this person, it becomes safe. And that begins to wire and shift your bodily functioning, so there's a freer flow of navel radiation, of breath. There's more communication, belly brain to head brain to belly brain. Then you begin to be able to use choice about where it is safe or not safe to do this movement. So when somebody happens to say, my flow hand is this today, then we would say, yay that you know that's available. There will be times where shutting down is important to do. And you will learn, you are learning that then when you get to safety, you're probably, the next time you come in here after doing that, you're going to probably be going, catch this, Dee.
Right. Yes, I have all of this.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, true.
Right, so flow hands can be whatever starts to show up that's wanting to happen. And it's another one of those ones that has that Tai Chi kind of feel that, when I move my hands in front of my body, again, this is saying, I get to say what happens in the space around my body. Ideally.
That's the key word, ideally.
Ideally. More and more. And as we are healthier, the healthiest functioning we can be, we're able to take that bubble we blew up and bend it in, but not lose the meaning I deserve to take up all the space inside my body, around my body, and inside my body. Okay, so the next contralateral movement, we did twist and alternate shoulder rolls and flow hands, is bicycling on the changing table. So when we're on the changing table, then ideally we get to do any move our bodies want to do with our legs, because that's the way we're claiming I get to say what happens to my body. When the people who were diapering and dressing us feel it's my job to hurry this up, or maybe they feel feelings because they're facing the genitalia of their child, and there may be gender role dances that have occurred over generations, but for whatever reasons, many of us get that movement inhibited because it doesn't feel like a playful, free time. So the way we start inviting bicycling on the changing table, and I invite you now, is just a little waggle of your knees. Yeah, that's like that twist you were doing on the ground, but just a little bit. When you waggle your knees, the leg bone is moving in the hip socket. You might begin to awaken some psoas engagement. The psoas muscle runs in the groin area to the lower back, and when it contracts, it lifts a foot up. And then you can begin to put a foot down.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, just that movement is so powerful of awakening any urge to bring the knee in and put a foot down. It's a very powerful practice to invite people into, and to have a redo of someone saying, yay for you beginning to have that flow of energy in your legs that says, I get to say no about things related to my pelvis. I get to control the timing of things that are happening in my to my pelvis and to my legs. Yeah. So then after that practice, there is reach, grab, pull. So as you begin to feel some flow of energy, you might begin to feel star urges and wishes to reach. And when you do those reaches, you can begin to feel that is an awakening of your infant grasping, because there's a wish to grab a hold of something. And then if you're trying to get something, if you can't get it with this hand, then often you reach with the other hand. So therefore it is a contralateral practice. And it can be, when we are born, if we are put skin to skin on the body we come out of, there's a birth crawl that is in our bodies, wired. You can see it on video. Very few of us actually get to do it. But She for Two allows a little redo with some reach, grab, pull. When you lift your hand up, it can bring a deeper breath. So we have that alternate, that contralateral practice, reach, grab, pull. The next one is basketing. This one comes in the developmental phase where kids are first learning to toddle and they want to be caught. They want someone else to give them some control of all this active energy they feel. So they'll give a look, a cue to the elder, a cue to the person who has the power differential. Could you chase me and catch me? And so it's like if right now you moved your legs over that way, but stay seated, because that's going to be like the basket. Like your seat, like imagine my hands are the seat belt. And if you take your feet over that way, and then you begin to reach, grab, pull that way, but imagine I'm hanging on there, letting you feel that core to distal. I can like really feel my claws and grab. Isn't it nice to feel I can reach for anything and someone is keeping me safe?
Absolutely.
If only.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
I want to practice that one more time. That feeling of somebody's got you safe. I can want whatever I want. It's okay to want it. Because this person's not going to let me get a hold of something dangerous.
Or let me go.
Yeah, or
I
not.
feel the inner safety is knowing that I'm grounded.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then often what happens is it moves right into the next practice, which is snuggle pose or cocoon. Yeah, which is, then there is this turning, and even if there is more frustration about, I want to, you don't ever let me, no. There's the cocooning, and I brought Fred and I will often use this blanket with clients as a way to feel the cocooning. If it's a real parent, the parent can actually wrap their arms around the child. But for the coach, you can imagine these are the arms. You're a little kid, and these are the arms of the parent. And then you can snuggle down in there and do some side to side contralateral movement until you feel like you've worked it through, and then you feel relaxed. Now, another way people can do snuggle pose, and I'll demonstrate this, and the coach could demonstrate it and then ask what it's like to watch it happen. But pose of the child from yoga, in snuggle pose, we just invite you to cross your arms on your chest, and then gravity gets to be like that blanket and the floor. And you can squirm around in your pose of the child, tuck the arms in like this, and see how this is a replication of the womb, the pouch. And squirming around is like how, you'll see cats and dogs squirm around and then they settle. So that's snuggle pose. What was it like to watch me do that here in front of everyone?
I mean, there's certainly a redo that I think many of us as adults would appreciate. I think even if you had the most ideal situation as a child, some of these redos are very settling, or I don't know what the best word is, but it invites an idea of body embodiment and invites awareness to some of the things that you neglected, whether they're physical or just mental.
Yeah, and as you were describing and doing your gestures, your body had naval radiation in that way that feels play dance, not fight flight, but play dance activation. That play dance is an activation that comes from rhythmic breaking of the ventral vagal nerve. The vagus nerve breaks activation like the brake on a car. And then like with a car, if you're driving down, if you don't put the brake on, the car is going to roll. And you can put the brake on and release and brake and release and kind of control, like that. And we got that ventral vagal brake, and then we can actually get some active happening that is not fight flight. Cool. Okay, so the next one in the contralateral movement is sway. You could do it seated. So when you go side to side, sometimes people will just naturally start to sway, and if you as the embodiment coach kind of mirror what they're doing, then they can sometimes feel like, oh yeah, my body knew what to do, this feels so great. And they might even say, you're doing this sway, this practice sway, and this actually coordinates right and left brain. That left brain, gotta figure it out, can get balanced by some right brain sense of, yes, but there's plenty of time.
You often have to help clients, and myself included, have to remember that there is time. You know, clients will often say, oh, but this, but then I feel like this over here, and I don't know how to make a decision, and it's like, oh, I see, you're swaying right now, and, your left and right brains coming together and helping you in that situation.
And of course, little by little, we can even catch those have-tos, that pop out of us. We can catch me. I'll do it. I'll catch myself saying have to, and I'll remember when I say have to, that's gonna be more likely to create fight, flight, shutdown. And if I can find a sense of a get to, a want to, then I'm more likely to come into play dance. We will get to that when we get to pelvic transitions. So if we can also do sway, and you'll notice now we're moving to the end of the contralateral practices. If you would like to stand with me, we can sway standing.
Okay.
You can feel how sway is also possible. Stand up, and feel in a very mindful way the weight shift from one foot to the other. There's something about that idea. Well, anything contralateral is going to have that coordination of right plane. And then that feeling that this is like I could take a step. I don't feel so trapped.
Right, I'm getting ready. I'm balancing myself.
I could take a step. And as we move to some of the standing, some of the watch, holding that older child kind of growth, development in the practices, we have the practice danse de digestif. Now, danse de digestif is a practice that invites us to do a redo of puberty. Danse de digestif takes a sway and just adds in a little hip circle. So you could do like kind of a figure 8 hip circle on the right, hip circle on the left. And when we invite this, we will look away, because ideally beginning to feel into our pelvises, and during adolescence, all the things and changes that originate in the pelvis, in the gonads, the ovaries, then that's private ideally, not secret, but private. So we will often look away to give someone a chance to feel into that. And then they can begin to kind of notice just, what if, the symbolic redo of adolescence, what if it could have been a discovery process and not a time full of a lot of messages related to gender? Oh, you are this and therefore that.
Yeah, especially now. I think a lot of children growing up could really use, and just an opportunity for the inspiration. I know parents want to be able to dictate a lot or be able to guide them in the way that they think they should be guided. Unfortunately, children are going to grow up and discover if you gave them an opportunity or if you kind of shielded them and boxed them in. So.
Well, and box them in. So let's see, what's the last one of these? Oh, we can sit back down for this. But because the last one is knowing no. Now, gender role messaging that said to people who identify as men, oh, okay, your job is to protect, provide, and procreate. And that message creates a lot of burden on people who identify as men, especially when it gets started so young. People often tell little boys, it's your job to take care of your mother. Like, oh, you take care of your mother. And, mom's a grown-up. Mom can drive a car. I'm 5 years old. What do you mean it's my job to take care of my mother?
I have no idea what that means. Like,
Exactly.
especially at that age, but
Yeah,
even
exactly.
as you grow up, you don't know really what your mom needs. That's not your job.
Yeah. Well, in Choose for Two, we study the work of Judith Kestenberg, child psychiatrist Judith Kestenberg and colleagues, that identified infant rhythms. And half of the rhythms are indulging rhythms, and half of the rhythms are fighting rhythms. And these fighting rhythms are just the effort to be the unique being that we are. That the fighting aspect of it is percussive, and it grows out of just bite, the biting and chewing and the clawing moves of our animal bodies. And it's like what culture thought was a great idea. I mean, it was a reasonable experiment. But at this point, we're beginning to see it's not really useful. It was kind of like they thought, well, we'll let all the people who grow babies inside them and nurse them, we'll let them do the indulging rhythms, the sucking rhythm, and then we'll let the fathers do the fighting rhythm. But that would be like saying, well, we will all inhale and you all exhale. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
As if those can be separate.
Exactly, because we need all that. So now we get into, so knowing no. So the knowing no practice comes after danse de digestif and that look at puberty, because ideally we have this free flow of energy from the belly to the head to the belly. That will allow us to sense in our intuition when something doesn't smell right, when something doesn't feel right, like, ooh, something's not okay. Right. So the practice, as Fred is demonstrating, is just see. Is it possible to turn your head from side to side? Sometimes patterning growing up says it's impolite to say no. So we lose our ability to even know we want to say no. Get all kind of frozen in the neck. So knowing no is the beginning of, can I even turn my head in a way that would, that's right. Yeah.
Mind your parents, you know, or don't upset your mother or father, whoever, right?
Yeah.
Don't upset your grandmother, like, you know, and a lot of that particular thing manifests itself in, you know, you overextending yourself or your family for a family member that, you know, you have your core family and, oh, grandma needs this or auntie needs this. Well, did you make sure your children have what they need? Did you make sure yourself needed what you needed in order to give to children? You know,
exactly, so multi-generational. So that brings us to the gesture practices. So we've got navel radiation, getting some flowing going on so the body can naturally develop into the healthiest, most functional patterning movement possibilities. The gesture practices are the practices where we try to change the dance. We try to affect the dance. So the first gesture practice is saying no. So we practice actually coordinating that navel radiating flow that allows the head to turn, that could allow the breath to vibrate the vocal cords, to move the mouth and teeth and tongue, to say no. Maybe it involves some hands coming up, maybe it involves a foot stepping down. Sometimes we practice it in playful ways, like we might ask a funny question to a client like, are you wearing a purple hat?
No.
So, yeah. So saying no is the first gesture practice. The next is space claiming. Space claiming, you push into the chair you're sitting on, or into your own hips, or into your legs, to elongate your spine. It's like when you're 3 and you say, I put my own shirt on.
Look at me.
Look at me. Yeah. You will remember the time that when Fred was first learning about space claiming and we talked about hands on hips, he says, well, isn't that superhero?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And that takes us right back to the whole idea of you're supposed to save the world or save your family, as opposed to just, I am a superhero, I put my own shirt on.
Right. I am.
I am.
Therefore,
I am.
look at me. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So space claiming. And then the next one is ready stance. Now ready stance, yes, exactly. Ready stance, and Fred will demonstrate this, is feeling some softness in your hips and your knees and your ankles. This ability to feel, that you can walk helps you not feel trapped like a little kid.
Yeah.
I'm ready, I can walk, I can stand.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down to demonstrate that if we have a client that uses a wheelchair to move around, their ready stance might be a movement that helps somehow elongate whatever is possible, and that feels, I can do wheels, I can do this.
Yeah.
So ready stance is that sense of, I can move myself through space, which begins in the development of us to help us feel safe enough to have free-flowing navel radiating energy, have natural contralateral movement that helps us process, work through digestive issues. So the next one is push. So I invite you now to push in a whole-bodied way. There you go, into me. And again, it's that feeling of, when I push into what's not me, I find me. Yeah. And this is that effort to change the dance, meaning I can take up the space in front of my body, and somebody can ideally welcome that. Yay for you. Now you can recognize in this position the cat-cow pose, but I have come up and been the earth. I am the earth for you. You know, and our parents are the earth for us when we sit in their laps. Yeah. So there's push, and that push can happen in many ways, but are you feeling how the practices build upon one another so that we are getting more in our functional body, in our healthiest body, because we are redoing the dance of relationship. So chi for two is the energetic dance of healthy relationship. The next gesture practice, the efforts to change the dance, is patty cake. Because sometimes when people are pushing, you can start to feel them kind of vibrating, like they want something stronger. And so then we can say, well, this is patty cake. And you can high five it, yay for you. Yeah. Now this patty cake is also connection and disconnection. So you can invite people to be mindful of, I'm here, and then when you go away, I haven't left you. Yeah, so that patty cake can be next. Yeah. And then from there, is bite, snap, caught by the mother. So they build that push. I push into what's not me, I find me. If I'm wanting to, like, when push comes to shove, that kind of becomes that, I want to really push into you hard, and then if it's super hard, I want to push super hard, we bring it to the energetic realm, and we say, hey, you can bring that energy, that biting, snapping rhythm to me, and I'll catch it, just like it's a baseball. And then I can ask, does it feel like I caught what you threw?
Yes.
When we do that flinging of energy, it's also called flinging goo, you get to feel that flow of navel radiation up your spine, out your arms. Yeah, because there's more. It's going to make sound.
Yeah, you like that, the sound effect.
Well, I think it makes you feel like you're on ketchup. You know, some people do different sounds, and some people, I like the sounds, obviously, yeah. And then, once I caught it, and this comes from many sources, but it's kind of like a tree, taking the carbon dioxide and turning it back into oxygen. Is we can rub the energy like this, like make heat, fire, and fire causes transformation. So I've got your energy, and I'm getting rid of any shame you may feel, that to feel intense energy and bring it to the mother, and the mother catch it. And the mother is not about genitalia. The mother is just the wild mammal mother that says, oh yeah, you've got teeth, you've got claws, that's going to serve you as an adult being. And I can say, yay for you, and then I can give you that energy back, like giving the oxygen from the tree that took the carbon dioxide. So the progression is happening. You are beginning to express yourself. After bite snap caught by the mother is mouthing consonants, because that biting, snapping originates in the development of teeth and the chewing and gnawing on teeth. And it is chewing and gnawing moves that make sounds. Like, yeah, you could feel those teeth. And it's fun to feel how words are made, those sounds, those consonant sounds. And it's really helpful for the parents to feel how oppositional movement, like in push, like flinging energy at the parent, that energy is causing that child to be able to focus. A lot of the focus issues that happen in the world happen because it's like, well, don't bring that powerful energy to me. And then it's like, oh, well, let's see, where will I put it?
Oftentimes it ends up misplaced as an adult.
Yeah.
You're upset about what somebody said to you at work, you bring it to your spouse. That's not
Right.
you're supposed to bring it to.
So your coach lets you bring it here, lets you bring that percussive sounding of words so you become more mindful of that is a kind of bite snap. You know, and I'm hearing and am I getting this? And yeah, that's for the coach to do. Then, after the mouthing of consonants is drumming, and we're moving more into expressive therapy. And still, navel radiation. Yeah. So with drumming, just this one move of drumming is such a powerful part of the practice, which is taking the hand and hitting the drum with the flat of your hand. Like a baby sitting at the high chair. And we invite clients to feel what it would have been like when you first learned, I can make a sound. And right there, in that sound making, and we can recognize that making of sound contralaterally. Yeah. That's like you throwing the energy at me. I celebrate it, and now you can throw that energy at the drum. And the drum is catching the energy.
Finally demonstrated this with Pat Glass. He was very excited when it came to drumming time, so
Yeah.
it's starting to first.
And we've got that energy, that effort to change the dance, being caught, appreciated, coming to the drums. It can also come to paper. So you can reach here, reach, grab, pull. Got navel radiation happening. Free flow of energy, breath deepening, and you can bring some of these big feelings. You can let the crayon touch the paper, and you can watch something show up on the paper and see how that is. Yeah. And then, whenever that practice comes to an end, the person who's the coach can ask, you might want to say out loud or inside your head, something came out of
Yeah,
it.
something came out of me.
Yeah. And when stuff comes out of us, sometimes it has more to say to us, so people want to hang on to it, take it home, look at it again. Sometimes when it comes out, it's like, I am so glad to get this out. Yeah. I want to just like rip it up. I'm done. I want to wad it up, throw it in the trash. Yeah. And then we can bring the trash can and look at this word, trash can. There you go. Right. So we have art moves, we have drumming, we have art moves. And then we have jaw transformations and pelvic transitions. Jaw transformations begins to get at the depth of the wish to change the dance and how old it is, how multi-generational. So we invite clients to put a hand on their navel when you were in the womb, think back to the amniotic fluid practice, to deep nourishment core awareness. This is where the air came in. This is the oxygen came in, the food came in. Now, if we could have had an ideal birth, and you know now this is all about the redo of the ideal, we would have turned upside down in the womb. And then as our head came into the birth canal, it would have arced out and up, because that's the pubic bone of the mother. And once we got up and out, now we invite clients to put the other hand on your nose. Now I gotta get air coming in right here. I'm gonna have to get food coming in right here. If I am put skin to skin on the body, I come out, a birth crawl happens, so you might want to do some reach, grab, pull. And as you feel into this, can you feel how this need for things, this wish to reach, grab, pull, can have a real life-threatened feeling?
Absolutely.
So there's empathy in this practice. You know, when my clients come in and they're feeling like, man, I'm doing all this embodiment work, I'm getting healthier, but I keep reaching for the fill in the blank. This practice brings empathy for, well, yeah, this sort of desperate feeling we can get about grabbing at the things that might create some short-term ease, but amp up the long-term dis-ease. This practice helps more compassion, more curiosity. Now, pelvic transitions is a rock forward and back of the pelvis. And we invite people to know that when you were first learning to sit alone, this is what you did. And the ideal, because we let ourselves know what probably happened to us and happened to our parents and their parents and their parents. What would have been ideal is it would have been like, oh, wait a minute, I'm figuring out how to hold my own spine up, hold my head up. Now I can use both hands to grab toys. It would have been a process of, well, this is cool, look what I figured out how to do. And then there would have also been room for a yawn, enough of that, and now, okay, I'm ready to rest. This is a good practice for helping people feel the ideal rhythms of activation through play dance, and then, like I'm the fun discovery, and now I'm ready to rest. And maybe I want some water. Maybe it's the time for both of us to take a sip of water. My peppermint tea. So pelvic transitions is the last of the gesture practices. We've got these three, we're now on to the fourth. The gesture practices are an effort to change the dance. Then come the handling practices, because our efforts to change the dance don't always change it the way we wish they would. Now, the gesture practices are caught by the coach, but the handling practices are how we catch our own energy. So the first handling practice is hula hoop. So when we've pushed, when we've flown that energy out the arms, we feel the energy flow through our arms. So we are able to make a hula hoop shape. We're able to feel, hey, this is my space. I can hold my space. I have a flow of navel radiation. I have the contralateral movement that helps keep it flowing. Yeah. I can feel my hula hoop. And the word hula hoop comes from 12-step work, when people will talk about, well, my hula hoop, your hula hoop. Let me stay in my space and you stay in yours. The second of the handling practice is safety pose. We can feel how our hula hoop holds our space when we hold our knees. This kind of a pose. Maybe this feels a little bit unsafe, so safety pose sometimes involves something like, pulling the leg up like this and kind of hanging onto the leg, or even sometimes this pose right here. The safety pose is how our hula hoop hands connect with our legs and we feel like we are the catcher for our own energy. After safety pose is self-hug. So that same catching of energy. Now, a self-hug can be hugging self, but it can also be letting your energy come to your body anywhere your body could use some holding, some pouch for yourself. Yeah, that's that kind of thing. We will often invite our clients, where do you feel this feeling most in your body? Yeah, and their hands will just go right there. And then you can feel that energy called out like a baby. And your hands gave this symbolic redo to yourself. The ideal that a parent could be available to create the swaddling when that feeling needed some containment so we can work it through. Self-hug. Sound expressions. Sound expression is like a self-hug with your voice. There are 3 ways to experience the making of sound. One is to pay attention, be mindful about the physiology of making sound. Like if you were to say, I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing.
You can say it and feel the vibration of the vocal cords, the movement of the air that vibrates the vocal cords, and the movement of your mouth and your teeth and your tongue. And that can be empowering. I am capable of speaking.
I am capable of speaking.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that.
Yeah, and you see, then a space claiming just naturally came. Yeah, there was some navel radiation, and it came from that place of play dance. Not have to, got to, but just, hey, look at what I can do. You know? Yeah. See, it just grows, and then the coach can mirror it back to people. So the second way to experience sound, the making of sound, is to hear yourself say it.
So hear myself say it.
You might say, I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing.
Whoa, how is it to hear yourself say that?
How much time do we have? Often I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. To hear myself say it makes me feel like I might sometimes. I might underestimate the fact that I know a little something about whether it be work or what advice I'm giving, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And your hands started gesturing in a way that are saying, I get to take up the space in front of my body.
Yeah. I get to have confidence in what I'm doing.
Yes,
that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And this is how the practices build upon one upon another. The navel radiation that's coming right there. And the third thing about sound expressions is sometimes they change the dance the way we wish they would. But even if they don't, there is value in feeling ourselves make a sound. And there's value in hearing ourselves say it. I mean, you just experienced it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then, after sound expressions is bite, snap, caught by the self. So for instance, if you feel some big feelings, but you catch them yourself.
They didn't do this, they didn't do
Yes,
this, they didn't do this.
right. Yeah. But you're catching it yourself, and you might notice, you might catch that, wait, look a minute, that I'm feeling that wish to point a finger out to throw some energy, and I'm catching it.
Yeah.
And then I might even catch that I didn't do this and I didn't do this is, oh, wait a minute, that's that old survival mode with some self-shaming kinds of information.
Yeah.
Could I go back into a self-hug? Could I feel some compassion that would bring some deeper nourishment, deep core awareness? Could I bring some compassion by catching myself, bite, snap, caught by the self? And 2 more, bubble dancer and then catcher's mitt. So bubble, and our bubbles can dance with other people's by bending the bubble in. So if your romantic partner were there with you, you could bend your bubble in, and your romantic partner could bend their bubble in, and you can get close. You can get skin to skin. But you're each in your own bubble. You're each in your own hula hoop.
Right.
And then when you move apart, you don't feel, you can connect without feeling overwhelmed. You can disconnect without feeling abandoned, because everybody has their post-pubescent danse de digestif. Because if you do start to feel some reach, grab, pull, you know you got your coach to bring it to. And the final practice is catcher's mitt, and that's what Fred will do for his clients, for you guys, if you come and work with Fred, because he's training to be a chief or team embodiment coach. So catcher's mitts is just that once you have your hula hoop, then you can offer to the client, yeah, hey, send your energy to me, I can catch it. So I hope in this long video, we know it's very long, you got to watch the whole dance and see how the practice build upon one another to create healthy bodily functioning through the movements, but even more through the energetic dance. You got to do redos, you get to over and over, one practice at a time, to repattern your nervous system functioning.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you, Fran.